All right, the Ohio State Buckeyes are on the spring practice field with Ryan Day running the show, and the spring game coming up in about 3 weeks in Columbus. We got Buckeye Claire on the line, Claire Crawford in her Buckeye red, scarlet, all adorned and looking good. How are you, Claire?
You scared me for a second that you were not coming up with scarlet. I was really concerned that.
I know better. I know.
You do.
I know, Claire. You should know that I know. I wanted to identify it as red so everyone was together and then specify.
And brought it all back in.
There.
I totally appreciate that. Yes, I'm in my scarlet. I'm not in my scarlet short sleeve yet, but we're inching closer and closer every single day in Ohio.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there here as well. Hopefully the defense for Buckeyes fans is getting there because it wasn't there in the right spot much of 2018. Pulled it together late. Much better showings in the Rose Bowl, the Big Ten championship game, and against the Michigan, even though the 39 points would speak to it otherwise. I think they played pretty well against the Maize and Blue. You had to take the score into consideration. It was just that kind of game and gave up some scores that didn't matter. But a lot of guys leave, a lot of guys come back, and a lot being stated beyond the personnel, a big change in coordinators, of course, and we see just in the last day or two, Greg Schiano stepping down as the New England Patriots defensive coordinator. I don't know if he's going to take any credit for a Super Bowl championship. Being the defensive coordinator during the offseason in February, I don't know how much that counts for. But looking at the Buckeyes, just your thoughts about whether there are significant and real changes that have been made that should give hope to a better defensive performance that meets the standards of not just the standards of the program, but the talent that's in the program.
I see glimmers of hope, and for a couple reasons that hopefully will give Buckeye fans just we'll give you some breadcrumbs, at least for now. I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is Al Washington, linebackers coach, is decidedly simplifying things, and we've heard a couple players mention it in sound bites here and there, and then Washington himself mentioning that he really wants to simplify this Ohio State offense. And specifically with linebackers, we saw them looking kind of mixed up and out of place and just a step behind oftentimes during the season. And they're obviously, Purdue and Maryland took great advantage of that. The Buckeyes ended up being 10th in the Big Ten in overall defense. So there's only room to grow there. And that's an anomaly at Ohio State. It's an anomaly in the Big Ten for Ohio State to have such an abysmal defense. And it was frustrating because they would show flashes of greatness because of their talent level, but oftentimes we saw some really complicated schemes that seemed unnecessary. And obviously, every team is going to give Ohio State its best, but it's not an excuse to play like they did at Ohio State. So the belief in simplifying things from Washington and Madison and, all the other coordinators on defense is that it's going to allow Ohio State, who generally will have superior talent. If you're putting a hat on a hat at Ohio State, you've got to trust that year after year of superior recruiting and this talent that they've been able to bring in is going to be able to allow them to play a little bit faster. So as Ohio State fans, that's music to our ears to hear that defense is planning on playing faster, and it gives them a little room. The other addition to the Ohio State defense is the buzz around creating a bullet position. So that hybrid position between safety and linebacker, that's really the only major complicated tweak that it sounds like they're installing. But it sounds like Brendan White, who would be returning starter from safety, would be moving into that bullet position. And, every Buckeye fan that's been a Buckeye fan for long enough, bullet is magic to our ears as well with the silver bullets. But certainly it would be something interesting to see how they end up employing that on that Buckeye defense.
Claire, I'm going to take advantage of you calling me out at the top of the segment concerning the red versus the scarlet, because, yes, we've always had the silver bullets. It is scarlet and gray.
True. Very true.
And silver sounds so much better. Silver
It does.
bullets, not gray bullets. And also that the helmets are
So,
obviously silver.
yeah. Maybe we'll have to make a transition. We'll start a movement.
I don't want to start a movement. I'm steeped in tradition. I don't want to start a movement there.
Okay.
Because yeah, some things you just have to go with. It's like the Big 14. It's of course the Big 10. It's a brand name. Let's stay with it, even though the 10 meant 10 teams, and they should have had maybe a little more foresight, knowing that things expand and contract. But regardless, yeah. So you mentioned the defense and taking superior talent and allowing it to play and play fast and play loose and play without a cluttered mind, and to be 10th in the Big Ten in defense when you consider it's almost impossible to be any worse than a Rutgers or an Illinois defense right out of the gate. So I don't think they could probably send like 8 players on the field all season and not rank below those two teams.
Yeah.
In addition, it only makes common sense that if you have more talent and you're playing in a game like football in which there's a lot of strategy and a lot of scheme, the teams that don't have the talent have to make up the talent by out scheming the opposition. Therefore, the teams with superior talent generally, and I know it's a balance act, you don't want to be so vanilla that you're predictable, and the other team, which of course does have talent, is able to dissect you. And that's why the coaches make a lot of money, because they got to figure out all of that. Okay, we've got this personnel. What do they do well? I think this scheme in a vacuum is the best, but maybe it doesn't fit the personnel. So how do we mesh those two things? And then week to week, this is what the opponent does well. How do we take what we do? Do we have to tweak or change to counter what the opponent does well? And it's a complicated game, and that's why you got spring practice and time to figure all that out.
I totally agree. And, simplifying it as far as the Ohio State, on the Ohio State side of the ball is concerned, there aren't going to be too many crazy complicated offenses other than, the service academies. There aren't too many teams that are just going to throw the book at you as far as their offensive scheming is concerned. So, simplifying the defensive scheme, I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think it's going to be more helpful than an issue. Obviously getting new defensive backs coach, Alex Grinch, ended up leaving for Oklahoma. We saw him pretty quiet during the season, and you and I had both chatted about the absence of Kerry Combs and what big shoes those were to fill. And I think people underestimated how big those shoes were. And Alex Grinch is a very talented coach, but clearly just not really a fit for Ohio State. So Jeff Hafley will be stepping in there, and I'm excited to see what he's going to be able to do. But bringing in a Big 12 defensive backs coach, in hindsight, seems or a Pac-10, it's going to be a transition regardless this coming year. But simplifying things again, I don't think can hurt.